video, you will learn about web shells, how a hacker can take over a Linux computer, and how you can defend against it. In this video, in this example, we have a lab where we can upload an image, and it will simply show that image. Many web applications, they have an upload functionality where you can upload a file, and if that application is vulnerable, a hacker can upload a harmless file and get access into your computer. So how can you defend against this, and how does this work in practice? So here we have a simple app that displays a bunch of images, and it has an upload functionality that you typically see in many web apps, like when you maybe your app has a functionality to upload a profile picture or any kind of other picture. So here we can upload an image. Let's say we upload a random image. We can click open and click upload, and you'll see it's instantly uploaded and added to the page. Now, what a hacker could do is upload a so-called web shell. A web shell, as the name implies, it runs on the web, but it allows them to run commands on the Linux server below it. So here, if I click choose file, I can upload this web shell here, shell.php, click upload, and the file is now uploaded. You see the file is here, it displays something, but we cannot actually see the file itself. So with a web shell, they go to the link directly. So they want to know where is this uploaded. Let's say we right click, open a new tab. So we know it is uploaded in the folder uploads. However, the file we upload is not image.php, but our web shell. So I do shell.php and then whatever command I want. For example, I run the command whoami, and you'll see it instantly runs our username, www.data, which is typical on web servers. And using a web shell, they can run any commands. For example, pwd, and they see it shows the current directory. Or maybe you want to know about system. So it tells us about the system. This is a Ubuntu system. So using a web shell, they can run commands, in this case as www.data user. And then those commands are directly executed on the server. So this is a malicious file, the shell.php, and it's called a web shell. So a web shell allows a hacker to run commands directly on your Linux server if there is a web shell running. And this is not some complicated code. This is just a single one-liner. Now, they might try to do other things. They might, for example, try to read your password file, etc password. And in this case, they can read the file so they know which users exist on this Linux system. And they might go further. They might get a regular shell called a reverse shell. But the basic idea is this web shell. So if they have a shell.php or any kind of web shell and it is uploaded onto the server, it allows them to run commands. And you'll see the shell is a bit clunky because they have to type everything in CMD, but they can create a reverse shell and have a normal shell into the computer. So as a system administrator, you want to prevent any kind of web shell running on your computer, on your server in this simple web shell. If they have a web shell, they'll then try to get a reverse shell, which allows them stable terminal input and eventually to become root on your Linux system. So for example, here we have that web shell, shell.php, where they could execute some commands like whoami, or maybe the command pwd, any kind of commands. So they might start a reverse shell where the web shell then connects to their attacker's computer and allows them to type commands, right? So there's all kind of reverse shells that you can find on the internet. For example, this one's on Python and PHP and so on. So regardless of the details of this reverse shell, they run another malicious command. So let's say the PHP one. So let's move this aside. And if we scroll here, there's all kind of reverse shells. And PHP is in here, so they might run this command, where instead they connect to the attacker's computer on the port they are listening. And you'll see it took a second, but now the hacker has access into the server running below, into the Linux server. We'll see the user www-data. Now we can browse around, and we are now inside the Linux server. We are not root user, but we're in the server. So depending on the hacker's goals, they might try to become root or do other things on the computer. They might try to gain access to other computers on the network. So how do you prevent against this kind of attack, right? So this is one single file, and from there, they got access into your Linux server. And not just typing simple commands, but also having a terminal in your computer. So in the next section of this video, we'll go into how to defend against this kind of attacks and also how to detect. Let's see if we can detect this attack. If we can find this web shell, the first thing we'll need to do is to connect to our Linux server. So typically you would do so over SSH. So SSH with your username and then add the address of your server. So we'll log into the server. Now, the web server, it can run Apache, Nginx. Those are the most commonly used applications, server applications to turn your server into a web server. So let's check the logs of those files. So if we go to the folder var logs, so let's see cd var and then cd log, so the folder var log, and that's where Linux stores any kind of commands, anything that happens on the Linux systems. So if we list the files and folders there, we'll find many things here. So you might find Apache here if you're running Apache web server, or Nginx if you're running Nginx server. In this case, we have a log for PHP. So PHP is a scripting language often used for web pages. Let's first take a look at this Nginx folder. So we enter the Nginx folder and we list the files and folders with the ls commands. So in here we find an access log and an error log. The one we are interested in is the access log. It tells you anytime a user opens or connects with the web server and what page they opened. So if we take a look at this access log, so we do cut access.log and press enter, we can then see anything that happens. Now, this file can be very long because if your website is popular, it's going to have a lot of visitors. And so you can find things like maybe they open favicon or / or legitimate pages as well. But if you see something like commands in there, like ls or who am I, that's already very suspicious, especially if the file is named shell.php or any kind of file where it's clearly showing commands. So if we scroll down here, you'll see many commands. So there was some uploading. You see this who am I, and we basically detected the shell already. We see all the shell.php, and if we scroll down in this list, we can find out more things. So you'll see here, they run the pwd command, and here they start the reverse shell. You see in this very long command. So that's something you definitely don't want to see on your Linux server. So by taking a look at the file access.log in the folder varlog nginx, you can sometimes detect web shells. If some hacker has been malicious or has been trying to gain access into your system, you might find things, PHP files or similar, where with those files they try to gain access into your computer or run all kind of commands. So the web shell typically allows to run commands, but they could further escalate that and get a direct terminal in your computer, and perhaps get root on your Linux server as well. So you want to be very careful with the access log. You want to check that access log. If there's anything malicious in there, if anyone is trying to run commands directly, or if you see some kind of shell.php or similar web shell, sometimes these commands can be encoded. So in this case, they are literally, you can see the commands, but it can be they are encoded in base64 or other formats. So that's something to be aware of as well. In this access.log, you only want to see things that actually are on your computer that are for legitimate purposes. If there is something suspicious in there, then you might want to further investigate. So in this case, it says uploads.shell.php. Now, for any web server, it stores the file in var www and often in HTML. So often websites on Linux systems, they're stored in var www HTML. And the log tells us it's in uploads. So if we go to uploads and list the files and folders, we'll see the different folders. And to mitigate this attack, this vulnerability, you would want to remove the shell.php, which you can do with the command rm-rf shell.php. And to do that, you want to do it as root. So you want to do sudo r and then remove that file. And then that attack is been mitigated insofar as that it is not directly usable again. However, keep in mind that this wouldn't fully mitigate it, because you also want to prevent that in the web application itself. Because with the web application, we could upload any file we want. So you want to make sure that the web application also is not vulnerable, that they cannot upload anything they want, but only, in this case, for example, only images and not PHP files or other kind of files.